What's happening, everybody? Justin, Bridgewater's finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, fueled as always by the incredible folks at Nerd Tees. And ladies and gentlemen, my Nerd Tees delivery showed up on my doorstep this morning with 6 all-new blends that I have never tried before. Plus, I got some stickers. Plus, I got a bonus thing that I didn't even order. And this is why, whether it's in creativity or in business or your personal relationships, you want to work with good people that do good things. And that's what Ruby and the team over at Nerd Tees and Coffee Beans does. And they were very good to me on this order, and I can't wait to tell you about this new blend that I'm trying. Welcome to week 3 of my weekly CFL football pick show for the 2023 CFL season. I was about to say 2022, but we don't want to go back in time. I certainly don't want to go back in time to my performance from week 1, and I didn't in week 2. Really came out of the gates strong. I was 6-0 through the first 2 games, wound up 9-3 in week 2, which has us dead even at 500, 12-12 after that catastrophic week 1 performance. 3-1 straight up, 3-1 against the spread, 3-1 on the totals last week, has me 5-3, 4-4, and 3-5 overall this year. 9-3 last week, 12-12 on the season. We're back to even money. Also had myself an excellent bounce back week in CFL Fantasy. Week 2, I brought in 112.1 points. That was good for top 1,500 in the game overall. Top 160 in Derek Taylor's league, which I have decided to join. On the season, 183.9 has me just outside the top 2,600 overall and just outside the top 300 in Derek Taylor's league. If you go on my Twitter account yesterday, I believe it was, I set some goals for myself through the season. I want to be here by the end of week 4. I want to be here by the end of week 8. My ultimate goal is to be a top 500 CFL fantasy player this season. I think it's an achievable goal. I certainly hope so. And shout out to my most outstanding player from week 2. Obviously, it's Winnipeg quarterback Zach Collaros. 288 yards passing. He added 17 on the ground, 3 touchdowns, no picks, and I got that 2 times multiplier because he was my team captain. Good for 53.4 points in week 2. Massive performance for Zach. He is off to a white-hot start, and we hope to join him. Our week 3 slate of games looks like this. We've got the marquee matchup right there at the beginning. The BC Lions in Winnipeg to take on the Bombers. We got the Montreal Alouettes coming off the bye to go to Hamilton and take on the Ticats. Boy, what does their backfield situation look like now? Saskatchewan is in Calgary to take on the Stampeders. And the Toronto Argos, fresh off their season opening win, a very convincing win against Hamilton, they travel to Edmonton to take on the poor Elks. And that's the shirt that I'm wearing today because I just feel like the Elks need all the support they can get. The league-wide under trend stays strong here through 2 weeks. The under is 6-2 to open the season. There have been a couple of upsets to be had depending on your book. There's been 2 or 3 just straight up upsets so far this season. Couple straight up dogs. They're there to be had. Do we have any this week? Let's dive into week 3. We'll start with that marquee matchup, BC in Winnipeg taking on the Bombers. And for the Lions, it's been an exceptionally tidy start to the season. 2 dominating defensive performances, and through 2 weeks, the Lions are leading the CFL in pass yardage against, only allowing 132 yards per game through the air, and points, only allowing 7.5 points per game. I get the feeling that's probably going to change this week against what Winnipeg has done offensively this year. And I'll take the time to once again shout out Taquan Mizell. He saw his touches increase by 47% from week 1 to week 2. 15 touches in week 1, 22 touches of the football in week 2, and went for 116 all-purpose yards last week. Ladies and gentlemen, the BC Lions have stumbled upon James Butler Jr. because this is exactly the way they utilized James Butler. You love to see it. If anything, I want to see him even more involved in the pass game. This guy is a weapon, and they just kind of got him. And I've been really impressed so far this season with the way the BC Lions have spread out their offense, especially in week 2. Every Lions receiver who caught a pass, and there were 6 of them in that game in week 2, every Lions receiver who caught a pass caught at least 3. And 5 of the 6 receivers, funny enough, everybody except Taquan Mizell, 5 of those 6 receivers went for at least 45 yards receiving. Very balanced passing attack. Dominique Rhymes snagging his 3rd touchdown already of the season. He certainly leads the way for them, but this offense is dynamic. They can attack you from anywhere. On the Bombers side of things, last week it was a tight first half and, really close, really competitive. And then the Bombers just said, okay, enough of that, and went on a 28-13 run in the second half, allowing just 6 points in the final 25 minutes of that game last week against the Riders. Look, the Bombers are just a team that they don't make a lot of mistakes. They're not a team that's going to beat themselves. It's like me at the blackjack table. I'm going to force the dealer to beat me. Like, I'll stand on things that a lot of other blackjack players don't stand on, but I'm going to force the dealer to have to make a play to beat me. And that's what Winnipeg does. Winnipeg is not a team that's going to beat themselves. They've taken just 6 penalties in 2 weeks. Hyper disciplined. I think it's been like 3-3 or something like that, but they've only taken 6 penalties in 2 weeks. So I'm going to love that. Their opponents have taken 23. Zach Collaros has not thrown an interception yet this season. They did have some fumbleitis in that week 1 game against Hamilton, but that looks like it's been a blip on the radar because they've been basically perfect since then. And I want to take a second here to shout out a player that I think is almost criminally underappreciated in the CFL, and that is Janarian Grant. So Janarian Grant, the return specialist for the Bombers, he does get in on the offense here and there, but certainly just a weapon in the return game. 317 return yards so far this season in just 14 attempts. And it included a punt return touchdown last week. If we were talking about a player who through 2 weeks already had 317 receiving yards or 317 yards rushing, we'd be talking about who's going to be the runner-up to them in the most outstanding player conversation, because that's insanity. But because it's return yardage, we don't seem to give it as much credit or credibility. And I guess I understand why that is, but look, we got to appreciate when we're seeing a special player do special things. Janarian Grant is doing that in the special teams game, and it's putting his team in great positions to succeed. Obviously, this is the marquee matchup of the season so far. You're talking about probably a slam dunk West final if you had to call it right now. You're looking at BC and Winnipeg, probably in Winnipeg. So it's this game specifically. This game either proves that the Lions are for real, or kind of shows them and reminds them of their place on the food chain. So this is going to be an exceptionally interesting football game. Not a lot of teams go into Winnipeg and win. It is a very difficult thing to do. I got to go with the Bombers here. The Bombers and Lions get to play each other again this year, and I think the game is in Winnipeg again. So they get a second crack. No matter who wins and loses this game, they each get another crack at each other later on in the season. I believe, like I say, I think it's week 9. The defense you can get the defense. They've given up 27 points a game on average in 2 weeks, and not to completely dominant offenses, right? You're talking about Hamilton and Saskatchewan. So there are points to be had, but boy, it's almost impossible to stop this team from scoring. If anybody's going to do it, it's going to be BC, but that's what makes this game so interesting, because it could be another dominant BC Lions defensive performance, or it could be more of what we've seen from the Bombers. I'm going to lean with Winnipeg because the game's in Winnipeg. However, I am going to take the points. I am going to hedge here. I'm going to bite on this because the Bombers are favored by 6 points. If you look at the entirety of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers team and the entirety of the BC Lions team, I don't think Winnipeg is 6 points better than BC, top to bottom. Offensively, totally, I'd give it to them. They're playing on another level right now, these Bombers are. But when you consider how good BC's defense is right now, and the fact that their offense is more than capable of scoring points, putting up big plays, they've got the playmakers to do so, I don't see 6 points of difference here. If this was 3.5, maybe I'd have to lay it. Like, it's possible. But 6 points is too many, so I'm going to bite on that. I'm going to hedge and take the 6 points with the Road Lions. Total in the game set at 49.5. Don't even think about it. Like, these two teams with the offenses, the potency of the offenses that they have, Winnipeg giving up the number of points that they're giving up, take the over here. Over 49.5 points in BC Winnipeg. We're going to go Bombers 34, Lions 31. I think both of these teams get into the 30s. Winnipeg's offense to me is just undeniable right now, but I think this is going to be a close, super entertaining football game. That's what I'm expecting. That's what I think we're going to see. Let's move to Hamilton now, where the Ticats will welcome in the Montreal Alouettes coming off of the Week 2 bye. And look, they come off their bye after holding on against an Ottawa team in Week 1. And honestly, I have to say holding on. That was a competitive football game. They allowed 6 quarterback sacks in that game, but feasted on 3 interceptions from Nick Arbuckle. That was really the difference in that game. Even if he doesn't throw 2 of those, I think Ottawa probably wins that game. Cody Fajardo's Montreal Alouettes debut was a mixed bag due to the poor offensive line play in front of him, and I think there's a lack of mobility there as well. You have to wonder if he ever fully healed from that leg injury that he had a year or 2 ago. But it was a mixed bag. He did okay. 261 yards passing. Nothing wrong with that. Didn't throw a touchdown. Didn't throw a pick. He did rush for 15 yards and a rush touchdown on 5 attempts. So he's not afraid to run the ball. The effectiveness is kind of in question a little bit, but he got into the end zone, and that wound up being the difference. But a good chunk of that 261 yards passing was to the benefit of Austin Mack making his CFL debut. 4 catches for $120 through the air. Huge debut for him. And I got to shout out another special teams player, Chandler Worthy. 140 return yards on 8 returns in that game. He had a monster game. I think he's right up there with Janarian Grant among the best kick and punt returners in the CFL. He certainly showed it in Week 1. Now let's talk about the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Do I owe y'all an apology? I feel like I sold snake oil with the Ticats, because so far it's been James Butler, who's touched the ball 36 times, put up 183 all-purpose yards, has 2 rushing touchdowns. He's doing fine. Nobody else has fully shown up for the Ticats. Tim White's doing what he can. Duke Williams is doing what he can, but the ineffective quarterback play, and look, huge part of a receiver's job is what's the quality of the passes that are being thrown my way, and they can only do so much. And it's been James Butler who's been effective, and basically on offense and on defense, everybody else. I can't explain to you properly how disappointed I am in the first 2 weeks of the Hamilton Ticats. The story of this week is who's going to be playing quarterback for Hamilton. Bo Levi Mitchell obviously injured his groin in Week 2. They're like, oh, it's lower body. He went to the ground and immediately grabbed his groin. It's a groin injury. And I'm like, well, maybe it's hamstring. It's a groin injury. Whether it's a strain or a pull, he might have torn it for all you know. Like, until we know what that is and get kind of a prognosis on that, we don't know what the quarterback situation is going to be. Maybe Bo plays this week. Maybe it's Matthew Schultz. Many would make the argument that they'd be better off with Matthew Schultz given the way that Bo has played in the first 2 games. If Schultz plays, I will say this. He's more than capable of sustaining the biggest weapons in Hamilton's offense. He can sustain the pass volume of James Butler. He can sustain Duke Williams, who was basically his favorite target when he came into the game last week. He can sustain Tim White. You saw him throw a touchdown pass to Tyler Tarnowski, so clearly he has red zone favorites, guys that he gets to work with more so in practice. But I think he's able to sustain their biggest fantasy options. Maybe not as well as Bo, but I think he can sustain them. To this point in the season, the Hamilton Tiger Cats have the 3rd worst QBR in football. The 3rd worst. You can't win without quarterback play in this league. This game's kind of interesting to me because I could very easily see this as being a must-win game for both teams. It's obvious why for Hamilton. They're 0-2. They're hosting the Grey Cup. They got to start winning some football games here. If they don't, they cannot afford to start the season 0-3. They just can't. They cannot afford to do it if they have any aspirations of making any noise this year. The Alouettes just sat on the bye week and watched the Argos be dominant. So if they had any, givings in their head about maybe we're the best team in the East. They just saw the Argos go out last week and do that. This is not a game they can necessarily afford to lose. So this feels like a must-win game for both sides. It's going to be rainy. It's going to be sloppy at Tim Hortons Field. It's going to be real interesting to see which way this pendulum goes, regardless of who the quarterback is. If Hamilton loses this game, don't you kind of mop it up? Don't you kind of just say, like, hey, thanks for coming, boys? Like, is that not it? If Hamilton loses this game, does Orlando Steinhauer finally get fired? Again, the thing that I've been calling for basically since last year. Is that finally it? I'm going to take the desperate team at home. It's tough because Montreal's going to be well rested. They're coming off the bye. Neither one of these teams has a great pass rush. But we saw that, like, Montreal might not be able to protect their quarterback. So if Hamilton can get to him with, like, Ja'Gared Davis, maybe, who I don't think has done much of anything substantive so far this year, that could wind up being a difference. This is a very tough matchup. Obviously, you can tell I'm conflicted about it. I've stumbled over my own words 2 or 3 times. I'm going to take the Ticats here. They're a very marginal favorite at home. They're minus 1.5. I have to believe that line will move when Bo is ultimately ruled out, which I think he will be. So I think that line will move when that happens. I'm going to take it, and I'm going to grab the minus 1.5 on Hamilton. I feel like they're a slightly better roster top to bottom. Montreal looked a little bit better in their week one game than Hamilton has looked basically in both of their games. But we're going to grab the Ticats. I got to hold my nose on it a little bit, but we're going to grab the Ticats here and take the minus 1.5. Total in the game set at 44. It's going to be rainy, sloppy. I think it comes down to the run game possibly. Hamilton might actually have to commit to their run game if they have one. I'm going to stay under on this one. I just don't see a ton of points either way. Let's go under 44 points in Montreal-Hamilton. Let's go Ticats 19, Alouettes 16. Not a lot of touchdowns here. I think the field goal kickers will have excellent days. Let's take the Ticats. Maybe they win it on the last second. Who knows? Let's take the Ticats to beat the Owls. I know I tweeted that I might be, fading the Ticats rest of season. Clearly I'm not. We'll see what happens this week. Before we move on to the second half of the week, I will take this opportunity, as I always do, to shout out my great friends and sponsors at Nerd Teas and Coffee Bean. Of course, like I said right off the top of the show, I got my new package from Nerd Teas and Coffee Bean this morning. 6 brand new blends that I have never tried, including this one, Maple Peach. Now, this is one that Ruby, who runs Nerd Teas and Coffee Beans, says that she has been drinking a ton of lately. Smells a ton like maple before it's been brewed. The peach really comes in after it's been brewed and hot. And when you take a sip of it, it is tasty. It is delicious. I enjoy it quite a bit. Maple Peach, it's one of the brand new ones that I've never tried before. And if you've never tried Nerd Teas before, boy, do I have a deal for you. Nerdteas.ca, and you want to use my promo code, which is BWFinest. That is going to save you 15% at checkout. You're also going to get free shipping in Canada on any order over $100. And if you're one of my American viewers, you're going to get a great conversion rate on the US dollar. Try some maple peach, try some blueberry, try some watermelon oolong. I've talked about a lot of blends on here over the last few years. There's dozens and dozens of incredible loose leaf tea blends, as well as a bunch of estate coffee blends, flavored coffee. If you're a coffee drinker, Nerd Teas and Coffee Bean has you covered as well. Nerdteas.ca, promo code BWFinest, save your 15%, get your free shipping, find yourself something to love, or find someone you love something to love. You can do it on nerdteas.ca. All right, second half of the week, let's go. The Saskatchewan Roughriders in Calgary taking on the Stampeders. Ultra competitive game against Edmonton for the Riders in week 1. And then in the second half against Winnipeg last week, they get obviously absolutely pumped. They get outscored 13-28. I'm still not totally sure what this Riders team is. You got Trevor Harris, who clearly, he just showed last week, he's capable of going out and putting out a 400-yard, 3-touchdown performance. But I can't imagine that being the standard, that the expectation for this season for the Riders offensively. And again, it was a lot of that happened after the game kind of got a little out of hand. And honestly, that game last week could have been significantly worse was it not for the Herculean effort of wide receiver Samuel Emilus. 7 catches, 77 yards, and all 3 of Trevor Harris's touchdown passes in that game. He's already matched his reception total from last season at 10. An excellent performance from him. Is it a star-making performance from him? We may have to see. I want to take a second to talk about the Riders' run game too, because it hasn't looked overly impressive in the first 2 weeks. Game script has played a bit of a role there for sure, especially last week, but it's hard to envision the Riders winning many games if Jamal Morrow is only touching the ball 10 times a game. He's too much of a weapon to give him that little volume. Like, Frankie Hickson could have all of the volume if you're only going to give your top running back 10 touches a game. That's combined between the run and the pass game. Morrow's been basically invisible in the pass game, which I don't think is typical of him. And I don't think it's typical of Trevor Harris. I feel like Harris uses his running backs a little more than that in the pass game. So I don't really know what's going on there. Morrow got more volume in week 2. We'll see if the volume continues to go up, at least in relative terms, relative to what they gave to Frankie Hickson. He got more volume. We got to see what's happening there, and especially in a game that, once again, is going to be rainy, the run game is going to be that much more important. And speaking of, let's go to the Stampeders side. They righted the ship last week despite a pretty undisciplined outing where they took 10 penalties for 83 yards. Like, look, that's 80% of the football field you gave up in penalty yards. You can't do that if you want to win. A 17 carry, 98 yard, and 1 rush touchdown performance for Davis Mills. Obviously kind of pinch hitting here for Kadeem Carey, who landed on the 6-game injured list, so they're not going to have him for some time. Davis Mills showed that he was capable of carrying that load. If he stays healthy, I think he's the guy for the Stamps. And 106 receiving yards on 8 catches for Reggie Begelton, having a bit of a breakout performance there this season. He's on the board in a big way. Look, the Stamps faced ineffectual opposing quarterbacks last week, but I still have to shout out the secondary. They only gave up 160 yards passing, and they had a pair of interceptions. Opportunism on defense is what's going to lead to success for the Stamps, and it's going to mask a lot of problems because this Stamps team, once again, is nowhere near the Calgary Stampeders of old. The standard that the Calgary Stampeders have set over the last 10, 12, 15 years. This team is not that, but opportunism on defense will mask a lot of those problems. Calgary's the better football team on paper here. That could have changed in a big way if Kadeem Carey went down and there was no running back there that was capable of picking up the pieces of that. Clearly Dedrick Mills is. I think I might have called him Davis Mills a time or two here. It's Dedrick Mills. I think the run game is the difference in this football game, and I think it offsets the Riders' pass rush, which has been pretty good this year. 3 is a key number. I want you to remember this. 3 is a key number. If the Stamps allow 3 or fewer quarterback sacks, I think they put themselves in a position to win. If the Riders have pinned their ears back and they're getting to Jake Maier 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, the upset is definitely brewing. Once again, I mentioned it's going to be rainy, which I think makes points at a premium in this football game. I think it makes the run games that much more important. And that being the case, I'm going to roll with the Stamps here. I think they've got the better overall run game right now. I think they're more committed to their run game right now. I think that winds up being the difference. That can also neutralize, as I mentioned, kind of neutralize the Riders' pass rush a little bit, or potentially could. I'm going to take the Stamps here at home to get the win over the Riders. On the line, Calgary's laying -4. I felt a little uneasy about going above a field goal in this one, but I think I'm going to lay the points. I think they cover this. I think anything under a touchdown here, I think I'd probably grab, especially with what the game script is likely to be. So we're going to grab the -4 there, lay the points on Calgary. Total in the game set at 45.5 points. I'm going to go under on it one more time. I think the rain plays a factor. I think the run games become that much more important. I think these are 2 fairly decent run defenses, so that keeps the points lower. Let's stick under 45.5 points in Saskatchewan and Calgary. Let's go Stamps 23, Riders 14. So Stamps win, Stamps cover, and give me the under. And we go to our 4th and final game of the week, which actually interesting note, next week, we only have 3 games to talk about. We're going to have 3 teams on bye, and there's only going to be 3 games in week 4. Just a little programming note for next week. So, Toronto taking on the Edmonton Elks. Chad Kelly, he's as swaggy as promised. Ugh. God, I hate... God, I feel sick even saying that. But you got to give the guy his props. It wasn't a dominant performance, but he puts up 3 rushing touchdowns, an unquestioned win. At no point did it feel like Toronto was not going to win that game. And he had a clean passing game as well. He completed 60% of his passes, 213 yards. It was a fine performance, a performance that showed, I think, especially from a leadership perspective, Chad Kelly's ready to be the number 1 quarterback for this team. If anybody had any questions about that, I think he would have alleviated a lot of those with that game last week. And shout out to wide receiver DeMonte Coxey, a career game, 131 yards receiving on 6 catches. No other receiver for the Argos had more than 38 yards, and I believe the 38 yards was Curly Gittins. That might be a problem. I think you got to spread the offense out a little more than that, but look, Coxey was clearly rolling. He put up a huge game. I can't exactly blame Chad Kelly for going back to the well there a time or two. I just think you got Curly Gittins there, man. He's one of the best receivers in this league. You got to give him the ball a little bit more. And also, Andrew Harris rushing touchdown. His first regular season rushing touchdown as a Toronto Argo. His first regular season touchdown since 2021, in fact. So it's just good. It's just good to see a legend of the game score a rushing touchdown in the regular season. When that happened, I was like, damn, I have AJ Ouellette on my fantasy team, so I really would have liked that to have been AJ Ouellette, but I'm very happy to see Andrew Harris score a rush touchdown in a game. Let's go to the Elks now, and boy, has the bottom ever fallen out for this team. No tangible pass game whatsoever. Taylor Cornelius has been bad throwing the football. No commitment to Kevin Brown as a runner, which he's a good running back, but you got to use him. No commitment to that. And again, game script plays into that, but still, sometimes you just got to run the ball for the sake of running the ball. I go back to that Boss Rutan advice, and I put this on Twitter a couple days ago. Boss Rutan's advice was when you're in MMA grappling, you strike to pass guard and you pass guard to strike. You throw the ball so you can run the ball, and you run the ball so you can throw the ball. There's a balance there. You can't be one-dimensional. If you're one-dimensional, you are going to lose. The Elks have also shown really nothing dominant on the defensive side. What's the answer? What do you do? What do you do and where do you go when nothing seems to be working? And also, if you're the Elks, if you have a 1, 2, 3, 4 at receiver of Gino, Steven Dunbar, Kyron Moore, remember Kyron Moore is there, and Manny Arsenault. You can't only have one of those receivers being above 55 yards receiving after 2 games. You have to spread the ball more than that. I understand Geno Lewis is Geno Lewis, which also, why are you going to have Geno Lewis on the roster if he's going to have 1 catch for 9 yards? Your 6th receiver can catch 1 pass for 9 yards. It was just it's been an all-around bad first couple of games for the Elks. They showed a little bit on the defensive side in week 1, but they showed nothing last week, and they deserve to get shut out like they were. Look, this could be the ultimate trap scenario. You really want to look at this great team on one side, floundering team on the other, but sometimes there are signs when those big upsets happen. The team that, achieves the upset, there are signs that they're doing good things. I don't think the Elks are doing any of those good things, so I don't think any of the signs are there, which is why I don't smell an upset in this situation. I don't believe an upset is coming. There's rain, so again, the run game probably going to be at a premium here, but to me that plays right into Chad Kelly and his abilities as a starting quarterback, so there's no reason not to take the Argos here and not to lay the points because they're only favored by 6.5. So they're favored by less than a touchdown. I imagine this number will be closer to 10 by kickoff. So if you can get minus 6.5, I would recommend getting it now. So we're definitely going to take the Argos here. I feel real confident about them winning this game and lay the 6.5 because I don't see any reason not to. Total in the game set at 44.5. Once again, it's going to be rainy, run games at a premium. Edmonton is not committed to theirs at all. Toronto clearly is with their pair of really good running backs. So take the under in this one because I think the run game is going to be a huge part of it. Take the under in Toronto and Edmonton. Let's go Argos 27, Elks, I don't know, 7? Give him a touchdown. Like, Taylor Cornelius isn't even running the ball anymore. Like, what's this team doing? There you have it, folks. Those are my picks for the games in week 3 in the CFL. Go over them here with you one more time. I've got the Winnipeg Blue Bombers beating the BC Lions 34-31, which means I'm taking the +6 points on BC in a game that goes over 49.5. I got the Hamilton Ticats beating the Montreal Alouettes 19-16. I'm laying the -1.5 on Hamilton, and the total stays under 44. I got the Calgary Stampeders beating the Saskatchewan Roughriders by a score of 23-14, which means I'm laying the -4 on Calgary in a game that stays under 45.5 points. Sorry. And I got the Toronto Argos dominating the Edmonton Elks 27-7, laying the -6.5 on Toronto in a game that stays under 44.5. Now, one of the big drawbacks to the fact that I record these episodes, or usually try to record these episodes on Tuesday, if scheduling permits, is the way that they're doing CFL Fantasy this year. Like, it's after 9 o'clock Eastern on Tuesday morning, and I can't set my Week 2 lineup yet. So that's a problem, because the week's been over since Sunday. So it's 2 days later. Why can't I set my lineup yet? So I don't have my final CFL Fantasy lineup for you for week 3, but I will tell you players that I am considering at the various positions. Zach Collaros feels like a good play again because, my God, he's had such a scorching hot start. But playing the best secondary in the CFL, that gives me pause because he's going to be max money. He's going to be $15,000. Of the quarterbacks in that game, I'd probably lean Vernon Adams if he's cheaper than that, because Winnipeg's defense has not been great from a scoring perspective so far this year. But I'm definitely going to consider Chad Kelly. I'll be really interested to see what his price tag is this week. Matthew Schultz would not be the worst option here. I think he's only going to be like 7,000 something. Running back, Dedrick Mills is not going to move from my roster, I don't think, until maybe I get priced out of him. But I'm definitely going to be anchoring around Dedrick Mills because the run game is going to be huge. AJ Ouellette, I'm sure, is probably going to be in my lineup again this week as well. I'm going to try to sneak Dominique Rhymes into my lineup because I expect a ton of points in that game. Dominique Rhymes, I'm definitely looking at. Austin Mack for the Alouettes off of that huge performance from last week. And probably Trey Odom's Dukes. I think he, again, set 2 straight performances of double digits in fantasy. When it comes to defense, I'm probably going to once again go for my cheapest option. If I can take the Argos, I will, because obviously Edmonton is going to give them plenty of opportunities for interceptions, fumbles, and fantasy points. So if I can afford the Argos, I'm going to take them. My final fantasy roster will be in the comments down below. I just can't give it to you because I can't set it yet. There you go, folks. The Week 3 episode is now in the books. Thank you so much for taking the time to stop by, watch the show, leave your comments like always. Been a very successful first couple of weeks here from a viewership perspective. I'm very, very grateful for that. I really appreciate it. That's it for me, Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, fueled as always by the incredible folks at NerdTees. Enjoy the games in Week 3. We'll see you again for a 3-game Week 4.